All right. Good evening to all of the people in the room and everyone who is joining us virtually online. I'm so happy to be here and to have you all here in person and virtually. We know the world that we're living in, so I'm happy that folks are joining us. My name is Dr. Ebony Jackson, and I am the director of the Women's Center for Gender Justice here at York College. As you all know, March is Women's History Month, and we are so excited to be here to celebrate women, to celebrate women's achievements and accomplishments, not just this month, but especially this month. And I could think of no better way to kick off this month's celebration than with the incomparable Ms. Shellye Archambeau, who we will all have the pleasure of speaking with tonight. And never fear, it's not just going to be me doing the talking. Towards the end of our time, folks here in the room, as well as the folks who are online, will have an opportunity to ask questions as well. So everyone's going to get in on this action. Before I go too far, and I always like to do my thank yous at the beginning, so that way anyone who I forget, I can remember to thank at the end, right? I need to thank folks for bringing this entire evening to fruition. Of course, I have to thank Ms. Archambeau for being here with us virtually for this month, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the incomparable Naisha Howell for yes, please, a round of applause in the room for Ms. Naisha Howell, who really helped to conceive this and bring this together. And she's my connector extraordinaire. I need to thank President Bernicia Johnson-Eanes, as well as all of her staff in the office, because without them, this would not be possible. President Eanes is not with us tonight, but we will have remarks in just a second from her Chief of Staff, Ms. Dana Trimboli. So I'm excited to have her here tonight. I need to thank the tech team, because in the world of COVID and hybrid events, I would not be able to do this without Raphael, Marlon, and the entire tech team, making sure that we can see and hear each other properly. So thank you for what they have done and what they will continue to do throughout this night, because I am no tech guru. So thank you to the tech team. I need to thank my staff, who has put up with me running around like a chicken with my head cut off for the last 2 weeks. So thank you to the ladies who work in the Women's Center for Gender Justice, would not be able to do this. And of course, our event planner extraordinaire, Sandra. You go, girl, because it's so nice to have an event planner to do all of these wonderful things. So those are my thank yous. Trust me, if I forgot anybody, I'm going to get you. I will get you at the end. Do not worry. But before we go too far, I want to make sure that we set the stage for our conversation this evening. I am so excited to talk with our guests and about our topic, right? And the topic of tonight is taking risks and breaking barriers, something that I know I personally strive to do, and something that I think we could all learn from. And so this is a super important topic, not just for this month, but something that we can carry forward with us as we go forth and conquer, right? And so I'm super excited for our conversation tonight. Before we go, I definitely want to invite up our Chief of Staff, Ms. Dana Trimboli, who is going to bring some words of welcome and inspiration. I have no clue what you're going to say, Dana, but I'm sure it will be inspirational. But let me invite up Ms. Dana Trimboli so that she can get a welcome. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone here in the room and everyone virtually. And I want to wave hi to Shellye, but I'm not sure which way I'm waving to say hi to you, but here we are.
Straight ahead.
Echo Ebony's thank yous to everyone who made tonight possible. And again, I'm bringing greetings on behalf of President Eanes, who wasn't able to be here, but was deeply committed to having this program. And I am pleased to have the dynamic, talented author and power woman, Shellye, with us tonight, because I think there's so much that we will all learn and take away from this program. You know, for me, I think it's important to celebrate Women's History Month because it gives us a fantastic excuse to create spaces for women to share, to draw strength from, to gather inspiration, and to show up for ourselves and for each other, because we know that as women, we are stronger when we are together. And over the past 2 years, COVID has really taught us some harsh realities about disparities in healthcare for Black and Brown women. Violence has risen across New York City, especially for women in the streets and in homes, domestic violence. COVID allowed domestic violence to grow in ways that is unimaginable. But COVID also really allowed women to shine. Resilience in, as essential workers in healthcare fields, as becoming teachers at home, learning as students in a virtual environment. And I think COVID also allowed us to show the world that we can be resilient with our own self-care and around our mental health and taking care of ourselves. And so I welcome tonight as an opportunity, be an active listener. And if you can, I'm sure we will come away with many things, but come away with at least one thing that you can see yourself implementing in your own life, and use this opportunity as a moment to think of yourself and to think about how you can grow Women's History Month. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana, for those words. And as always, very, very appropriate in terms of the topics that we're going to cover tonight. So without further ado, I want to honor everyone's time and I want to get into our discussion, right? The first thing that I want to address, because even the ladies in my office were like, how do we pronounce her name? And I'm sure you probably get that a lot. And the best thing was when your assistant sent me your bio, it had a pronunciation of the name. And I was like, yes, thank you. And so I want to share that with all of you tonight. It is Archambeau. Archambeau, right? And I was so happy to have the phonetic spelling out of that. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that. And so basically, you know, you guys are lucky enough we're all lucky enough to be here with Ms. Archambeau tonight. She has a phenomenal story that I'm hoping that she will share with all of us tonight, that started out when she was just a young girl, probably not much younger than the folks who were here in this room. And it's an incredible journey that she went on to grow personally and professionally in the tech field, doing nonprofit boards, doing for-profit boards. And most recently, we are lucky enough to also be blessed with the fact that Ms. Archambeau has written a book, which is available for the folks who are in the room, the hard copies, but any of the students, and I think it went out to the entire college community today. Also, there is a phenomenal video book, which I have seen, and it is wonderful, that you all will have access to, I think for 7 days. I believe that's
correct.
Yes, so please, please, please take advantage of it. We are going to be talking about it tonight. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Archambeau to just give us some remarks before we get into our moderated discussion. And remember, for those of you who are online, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please use the Q&A function, the little button at the bottom of your screen to put your questions. And the folks who are in the room, we have a microphone set up and you guys will be able to ask questions as well. So please, Ms. Archambeau, please take it away.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I appreciate that, Dr. Jackson. So first of all, I've been looking forward to this. I really enjoy my opportunities to interact with students. And so as you were just told, please think through questions. That's my favorite part. But just to tee it up, I was asked to share a bit about my background. So you really have to roll the clock back. I grew up in terms of elementary school, middle school, right kind of thing in the 60s. Now, the 60s were a really challenging time. They were racially charged. Everything was going on in the 60s. But civil rights was something that probably half the population thought should happen, which meant the other half did not. And it became really clear to me at a very young age that, you know what? The odds aren't in my favor. They just aren't in my favor. My family, until through kindergarten and beginning of first grade, we lived in Philadelphia, heart of Philadelphia. I didn't, everybody was mixed races and colors. I didn't even think about race. And then my father got a job opportunity and he didn't have a college degree. So anytime an opportunity came up, he took it. And so we moved all the way across the country to California and ended up in a neighborhood where I was the only little Black girl, not just in my class, not just in the grade, but actually in the school. Unbelievable. And trust me, adults and kids alike let me know very quickly that they didn't think I belonged. I was physically abused, beat up, right? Verbally abused. It was not good. So here I was, and my self-esteem early on was really taken for a loop there. But I was fortunate. I had a couple teachers and parents who really believed in me. So fast forward, we continued to move around. I lived in 7 states before I was in high school. So I was always like that new kid on the block. But when I got to high school, one of the things that I figured out is I really liked clubs and organizations. It was a way to kind of get involved, meet people, feel connected and like I belonged. And so that's what I did. And it turned out that I actually liked leading them and taking positions of leadership, because then you could actually have a little bit of say on what happens and people looked up to you. And I liked that respect. So fast forward, I'm in my junior year of high school, and my guidance counselor, that obligatory conversation with a guidance counselor, you all went through it. Are you planning to go to college? Yes. What do you want to do after college? I have no idea. I just know I want to be able to keep the thermostat at 72 degrees in the winter. I want to be able to eat out at restaurants and travel. Those were all the things I couldn't do. Okay. So that's what I wanted. And she said, well, what do you like to do? And I said, oh, I told her about the clubs. Right? I'm in everything, American Frill Service, National Honor Society. I'm in the French Club, right? And I like leading them. I'm even a Girl Scout, but don't tell anybody. And she said, well, clubs are like business. Business. Yeah, you pull people together, you get things done. And I said, oh, okay, well, if I like clubs and I like leading clubs, then I'll go into business. And the people who lead businesses, when I looked up, they were called CEOs. So I said, all right, I'm going to go be a CEO. Now, did I have any idea of what that really meant? No, it was completely audacious and totally naive. All right. But I now had a goal. And that's the way I've always approached things. It's like, all right, let me set a goal. And I ask myself always the same 2 questions once I have a goal. What has to be true for me to achieve it? What has to be true? Well, I didn't know what had to be true. So I had to do all this research. Who were CEOs? What were their backgrounds? What kind of education did they get? What kind of jobs did they take, right? I did all this homework, which, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, homework doesn't end when you leave school. I still do homework to this day, all right? You're constantly learning, constantly learning. So at any rate, do all this homework and say, all right, so I need to go to a school that has business degrees because I want a business degree. I want to get into tech because it's a growing industry. I kind of mapped out this plan. Went to University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School, graduated, and took a job in sales because all the CEOs at IBM, my research showed, started out in sales. So I figured that had to be the path to power. Not because I thought I would want to sell. I had no idea, but these were skills that obviously were needed. I worked my way up the corporate ladder at IBM, 14 years. I got to the point where there wasn't anyone who looked like me higher than me. I was running a multi-billion-dollar division over in Asia Pacific. My boss reported to the CEO of the company. I was a GM and vice president, right? But I didn't think I'd actually have the opportunity to truly compete for a CEO job. So back to the plan. I still want to be a CEO, maybe just not here. Worked my way to Silicon Valley. And sure enough, after being the chief marketing officer and EVP of sales at a couple of public companies, I got my opportunity to be CEO of a company that became MetricStream. It was a troubled company. We turned it around. And over the course of about 14, 15 years that I was CEO, we turned it into a global market leader with thousands of employees all over the world. And right now, I serve on public boards. I'm on the board of directors of Verizon, Nordstrom, Roper Technologies, and Okta, nonprofits, Catalyst and Braven. I advise companies and universities, and I coach CEOs. And life turned out pretty well because I put a plan, I set a goal, I put a plan in place, and I went after it. But let me tell you, I didn't do it all by myself. And I hope as we go through Q&A and our conversation here, we'll talk more about that, because that's the key. The key is not to try to do it by yourself. The key is to take help wherever you can get it.
And thank you for that. That was a wonderful overview, but we are going to ask you some specific questions because it sounded like I set a goal and now I'm a CEO, right? And we all know that life is really simple and there are many, many steps that you had to take along the way. So I'm going to ask you about what some of those steps are. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion between Ms. Archambeau and I, and then as I mentioned, we'll have questions online and in the room. My first question for you, you talk in your book, and this is a wonderful, wonderful book, and it's called Unapologetically Ambitious. And it's that unapologetic part that I want to talk about. Yeah. Because I think that as when I talk to my students, many of them are ambitious, right? Many of us, we are ambitious folks. We are all in higher education to become whatever it is that we want to become. But that unapologetic part, I know me personally, I find it to be somewhat difficult. And I know that my students do as well. So how did you come to be unapologetic in going after the things that you wanted and achieving your goals?
You know, it's a really good question. And it's absolutely why I picked the words unapologetically ambitious. Because too many times as people of color, as women especially, you know, we're told we're ambitious and it's not meant as a compliment. Which, think about that. You would never like raise your children and say, work hard, get good grades, get involved, right? Do all these things, go to college, but but don't be ambitious. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yet, right, we accept that it says this four-letter word. And so we go through life feeling like we have to apologize for who we are and for what we want and from where we come from. Well, listen, you don't have to apologize. Who you are is just fine. It's what got you to where you are right now. Okay? So be proud of who you are. Be proud of what you bring to the table, because it got you this far and it's going to take you the rest of the way also. So this whole notion of apologizing for everything, you know, we apologize for our accent, or we apologize for maybe how we look, or we apologize for because we don't have this, or we don't have that, or we didn't have this experience. Nobody has everything. Nobody does. And you don't see them walking around apologizing for it. So no, be confident in who you are. Be proud of who you are. And keep your shoulders back, chin up, and keep moving forward. And when people say things like, oh, you're ambitious, and you know it's not meant as a compliment, don't just let it lie. Here's what I do. When they say that to me, I say, oh, really? What do you mean by that? I want to make sure I understand the feedback. And you know what happens? They kind of go, oh, well, I mean, because I mean, you're trying to shoot for whatever, this next job or this next job. And I said, oh, should I not aspire to be able to do more? I just want to make sure I understand what you're trying to tell me. All right. So what I do is I keep asking them to explain themselves until the point where they realize how ridiculous that statement was. All right. It's ridiculous. So don't let people say it and walk away. No. But don't get in their face either. Right? Just be real, like, oh, help me understand. I really want to take this feedback. Because that way you get to teach them a lesson. And maybe the next time they'll think twice before they say that to somebody else.
And you know, that's interesting, because I think that a lot of times I speak to our students who are incredibly talented, who care deeply about issues, who, are educated and becoming more so, but they really hesitate to toot their own horn, so to speak, right? And I think just to pick up on something you said, as women, we are socialized, we are taught to lean back, right? And to play the back and to work hard, of course, but not to toot our own horn.
Yes. Can I offer you, let me give you some tips. And these are the kinds of things, by the way, I talk about in the book. Here's the situation. You're right. You can't walk around saying, hey, look at me. Aren't I great? Look what I've done, right? No, nobody wants to be around people like that. All right. So no, you can't do that. But here's what you can do. You get the opportunity to tell people what you're capable of and what you've done all the time. It's just understanding how you can take advantage of it, because people will say, Miss Jackson, how are you today? And you say, fine, I'm good, doing great, right? No, I'm here to tell you, you're not fine, you're not doing great, you're not good. What are you? Oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. We just spent the last 2 months putting in place a brand new pilot program to blah, 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 blah. It's launched, doing well, and I can finally rest. What did you do? Well, you just told them what you did, right? And what you're capable of, and answering a very simple question. Now, when you do that, it has to be short, sweet, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Can't be a diatribe, right? And now all you've done is answer the question. Oh, how are you? Oh my gosh, I'm doing great. We actually closed a big deal I was working on, right? Blah, 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 blah. How are you doing? Oh man, I am struggling here. I've got blah, right? Just actually take the time almost each morning to figure out what have you done in the last day or two, that when people ask you, how are you? You can actually put in the words to let them know what you've actually done, right? What you're capable of. And you know what? It works. Because then people think, boy, every time I talk to Miss Jackson, she's always got something going on. And all of a sudden you're energized, right? Versus she's always fine. She's always fine. It's always fine.
And that's true. And I tell my students that a lot. Whenever I ask, hey, how are you doing? Fine. Even when I can tell that they're not fine, they always say the same thing. And so I think that's a wonderful tip that I know I will use. And that is a wonderful tip that our students can use going forward as well. One of the things that you said in your intro was about planning and being a planner, right? And also in your book, you talk about, making plans, implementing them, and, living with the consequences of said plans, which can be good and sometimes not so good. So can you talk a little bit more about that? And do you see that whole kind of planning and consequences as opposite sides of the same coin, or is it a continuum? Tell us about your planning process and how that led to some of the things that you've accomplished.
Sure. So planning has been front and center. And the reason planning has been so important is it's the only way I know how to execute on being intentional, right? So to get something done, to make something happen, to achieve something, to build something, whatever it is that you're trying to do, being intentional is the first step. Making sure that what you're actually doing is intentionally trying to bring you forward, right? To what it is that you're trying to achieve. But the way you execute on being intentional is by putting a plan in place, putting a plan in place. And that goes back to the questions I ask myself, right? What has to be true? First question, do the research. Once you understand what has to be true, then I ask myself, so how can I make it true for me? And the way you make it true for you is you put a plan in place, right? Okay, I want to be, make it up. I want to go forward and be head of a nonprofit organization. Okay, fine. What are the skills and experiences, right, that you need to go get it done? What kind of jobs should you go after first, right? You put the plan in place, and then you start executing the plan. And executing the plan is all about making decisions like every day, consistent with what you're trying to do. Let me give you Let me give you a crazy example. True, but crazy, especially when I think back on it. I was like you guys. I'm in college. I'm a sophomore in college. And I didn't come from a lot of means. I told you guys that. And so here I am, and I'm in Pennsylvania, and it's cold, and I need a winter coat. And so I go to the outlet mall, right? And I get a winter coat. I come back and show my girlfriend, my roommate, oh, bought this new coat. What do you think? It's one of these double-breasted and kind of a swing coat. So when you turn, it kind of flares out a little bit. And she says, well, Shellye, it's nice, but I mean, it's not very stylish. Because back in the 80s, when I came through, it was all about big shoulders, narrow fitted jackets, right? The whole bit. And this was just the opposite of that. And I said, I know, but I wanted to buy a coat that I could wear when I'm pregnant. And she said, pregnant? I said, no, I'm not pregnant. She goes, Shellye, you don't even have a steady boyfriend. What are you talking about being pregnant? I said, I know, but ideally, in addition to my career, I want to get married and want to have kids. And I'd like to do it sooner versus later. And what, a good coat should last you 7-8 years. So here I am, I'm like, 19, 20. So that's be 26, 27. So I'm buying a coat that I can wear when I'm pregnant. Well, here's the deal, right? She thought I was nuts. I wore that coat when I was pregnant. All right. Now, that's not the key of the story. The key of the story is every time I put on that coat, my goal, my objective was reinforced, right? It was reinforced. Make decisions every day. Assume your plan is going to happen and make decisions consistent with it. Because then when it does, you're lucky. Oh, Shellye, aren't you lucky? You get to wear the same coat and buy a new coat because, right? Me, I'm lucky, right? So that's the key. Intention. Put a plan in place. Make decisions every day consistent with the plan of what it is you're trying to do.
I love that. I love that. I hope my daughter who's listening heard that. You're not getting another coat for 7 years. That's what I take from the story. Okay, I want to ask you another question based on what you just said. You talked about family, and I think for me, the best chapter that I read in your book was when you talked about work-life balance. That term and what it means, and how that manifested for you. So I want to ask you to talk a bit about that, and I want to ask you to explain the term and what you think might be a better term to explain.
Yeah, so yeah, you're definitely teeing me up. I cannot stand the term work-life balance. I can't stand it. I believe it's just such a bad expression, because what is a balance? A balance is a fixed structure, right? With a bar and 2 weights on each side. And those weights are even at all times. It is static. Whose life is static? Whose life? Not mine. I can't believe any of you have a static life. And so suddenly we're going to take this work-life balance, even at all sides, at all times, and be judged against that? I have enough things to feel guilty about. I don't need like this artificial balance thing. No. To me, it's not about balance. What it's really about is work-life integration. It's about how do you take your personal objectives and priorities, your professional priorities, put those things together and reprioritize ruthlessly. That's the key, ruthlessly, so that you get done what needs to get done across your life. Now, what that means, I can tell you right now, there are going to be some things at the bottom aren't going to get done, which means you either have to find somebody else to do it or you have to live with it, right? Live with it. But the key is making sure you do what's important to you across your life. Now, here's the key. It's almost impossible to do that unless you decide for yourself what you are willing to be judged on. What you're willing to be judged on. Because trust me, the world will judge you on everything. I mean, oh my God, they're going to judge you on, what's everything. What is your major? What job are you going to get eventually, right? What car you drive, how you look, not just how you look, if you get married and have kids, how your husband looks, how they look, what are you doing? Where are you going for vacation? Clothes you wear. You get judged on everything. And if you feel judged on everything, then you feel you have to do everything really well. That's exhausting. Nobody does everything. So no, back to those priorities, decide what's important to you and what you're willing to be judged on and what you are not. And let me just give you a real example, because it's not easy. I realize it's not easy. My daughter, My daughter was born with thick curly hair. And the best way to keep her hair looking nice is you brush combed, you parted, and you braided her hair. Okay. Now I knew how to braid little girls' hair. I braided mine when I actually had long hair. Did my husband, formal football player, 6'2", big hands, did he know how to part and plait little girls' hair to look all nice and cute with bows and ribbons? No, no. Did he need to learn? Yes. I can't do that all the time, right? So what did that mean? That meant for the first month or so that he's learning how to do her hair, my little 3-4-year-old going off to preschool, she left the house looking pretty jacked up. Okay, I mean, crooked parts, one thick braid, one skinny braid, right? Something coming unraveled. I mean, I even have a picture of her where she was supposed to have 2 braids pinned across and one came down, starts to unravel, and that was a school picture. So listen, now, do I know that when she went to school, people looked at her and said, where's her mother? How could they let her leave the house looking like that? I'm sure they did. But you know what? Gethlin didn't care. She's 3-4 years old. She didn't care what she looks like. And Scotty needed to learn. That was what was important to us and our family. So did I care about that judgment coming down? Nope. They don't know me. They don't know my family. They don't know what's important to us. Right? And eventually he did a great job and she did just fine. So what I would tell you is you have to decide what you're willing to be judged on. Because otherwise, I would have had to figure out how every day I could make sure I did her hair so she looked perfect while I'm trying to work, while I'm trying to do this, while I'm trying to. No. Right? You have to decide, prioritize what's actually important to you.
I'm going to need you to say that one louder for the people in the back, Miss Archambeau. My students often talk about feeling judged, right? Because let's face it, I think it might be even worse now than it was when I was coming up. We're in the time of social media when everything is out there. And so I think if, per Dana's point, if we can come away with one thing tonight, it's don't worry about other people's judgment, right? And ruthlessly prioritize what's important for you.
Exactly right. Here's the deal. They don't know you. They don't know you. So they have no right to judge you. So why should you accept their judgment? Now, if it's coming from somebody who actually knows you, right, then you can have a conversation. But if they don't know you, I mean, Teflon, baby, that just comes down and rolls right off because they have no right. They don't know you.
That's wonderful. Yes, I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna give you credit. I'm gonna steal that one. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and we're going to open it up to the folks in the room and the folks online. And it's got to be this one, and the folks who download the code for the video book, right, which is available, you guys will hear this. But can you tell us, in your book, you tell a story about this kind of work-life balance, right? And you talk about a conversation that you had with your husband. I don't think he was your husband yet.
No,
right?
He was my fiance. Okay, I know what you're leading up to.
About your desire to have childcare, but your desire to still to be a working working woman. Can you tell us about that conversation, how you navigated that?
Sure. Okay, so remember the term I used? I said I'm really intentional. I'm intentional about everything. Okay, everything. And so I told you I wanted to be married and I wanted to have kids, right? If I could, that was what I wanted. So I actually, again, made a list. I was like, what do I need in a life partner? Given the things that I want to do, right? What do I need in a life partner? So I had this list. I wanted somebody who could cook. That was on my list because I don't want to be the only person cooking in the household. Otherwise, that would be my job solely, and that wasn't going to work, right? I wanted somebody. I mean, I literally made this list of what do I need. And then I pared it down. So it was only like 10 or 11 items. Anyway, I'm dating a man. His name is Scotty. I think he's pretty fantastic. He's meeting just about everything on the list. And we're getting really serious. And I'm like, oh gosh, there's one item on my list that we haven't talked about. And he can't ask me to marry him before I know the answer to this question. So we come back from a date one night and we park the car and turn off the engine, and I start to have a conversation. And I say, well, you know, Scotty, eventually I want to have kids. And he said, well, I do too. We've talked about that. I said, yeah. I said, you know, my mother was actually a stay-at-home mom. My parents made the trade-offs and the hard choices so she could do that because she had 4 kids in less than 5 years. And I kind of liked that, having somebody home, you know, with the kids, at least, you know, after school, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be willing to make the trade-off so that somebody could be home with the kids. And he said, well, you know, my mom worked, but she tried to be flexible, so she was there. He said, I'd be willing to make trade-offs so somebody could be home with the kids when it was needed. And I said, okay, I just don't want the person who stays home to be me. And then I shut up. And Scotty was like, oh, as he kind of realized what I was insinuating, right? And I just sat there, zipped. And he finally took a breath and he said, well, he said, you know, Shellye, I've been working my whole life. I've been working since I was like 12 years old. I like to work, but I could do that for you. And I said, okay, then. He asked me to marry him 3 weeks later. And indeed, we ended up having 2 children. And ultimately, Scotty did stay home with the kids so that we had flexibility to support my career as I aspired to achieve the CEO ranks. But that was a decision and set of choices we made. But trust me, we made a lot of tough decisions and choices to make that happen. I didn't buy a new car until Kathleen, my daughter, was in high school. All right. I mean, just when I say trade-offs and choices, I mean, I'm just telling you.
And that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. When I read that portion in the book, it definitely hit me. And I said, gosh, that's a story that needs to be told. As I talk with many women who come into the center about, you know, what they want to do after graduating here and careers and family, you know, it often comes up, and we talk about that balance. I know you hate that term.
I do hate that term. It's really partnership. And here's the key message. The key message isn't that somebody has to stay home. I mean, I was coming up in terms of professionally in the early 80s. Things were very different then than they are now. All right. So please don't walk away saying, oh, I have to have a stay-at-home spouse. That's not what I mean. Here's the key, though. The key is to have the conversations early about what you aspire to, about what you want to achieve, about how you guys will actually be a couple together so that you have a future vision of what you're trying to do together. So many times couples come together and they've only focused on the here and now. And then as time goes by, they're like, wait, but I thought we were going to do this in the future. And you thinking that, and I thought, aren't you going to do this? And and all of a sudden, right, it's really hard and it's really challenged because you're making decisions in the moment and it's really emotional. It's much better to actually talk through, what are you thinking? How are we going to work? How are we going to, you know, be a couple? Do that early so that later it's much easier to make these decisions.
And I think that also goes for, right, you know, for, you know, those folks who decide they don't want to be married, but, you know, you have to have those conversations with your family, with your support system, whomever that may be, right?
Exactly.
And so I think that a lot of times people skip that step, right? And I might be guilty of that one myself, right? Not having those conversations with the people around you who are going to support the things that you want to do, right? And so I think that's a really, really important lesson. So the time has come for some Q&A from someone, not me. And so for those people who are in the room, there is a microphone that's set up right here to my left. If you have a question and you're in the room, you can certainly start making your way over to said microphone. if you are joining us virtually on Zoom, please do use that Q&A function within Zoom, and someone in the room will ask the question on your behalf so that Shellye can hear it and answer. So we do have one young lady here. Please step up to this microphone. Just give it a quick test so that we can make sure that Ms. Archambeau can hear you.
Hello, hi.
Speak into the microphone for me.
Hello, Ms. Archambeau, how are you?
I'm doing well.
It's an honor to speak to you. My name is Tia, and while you were speaking, a fact actually came up to my mind, and I wanted to hear your opinion about it and maybe some advice to women like myself that have either felt the same way or been aware of this feeling. So in Hewlett-Packard's internal report, they stated that men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women tend to apply when they meet 100%. So for me, I'm going through that in my application process to jobs, and I'm wondering what advice you would give to someone in terms of applying to jobs that are possibly out of their full requirements experience.
Go for it. Here's the deal. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you don't get the job. Well, guess what? If you don't apply, you're definitely not getting the job. So my view is go for it right now, but realize when you don't have everything, all right, you have to really highlight what you do have, and you need to demonstrate in how you either interview or, there's all kinds of different ways that people are applying these days. But when you finally get that interview, you want to make sure that you communicate the fact that you are a fast learner, that you, can build skills quickly, right? You want to make sure that, all right, maybe she doesn't have everything, but if they believe that you are quick, right? That you are quick to judge, quick to, add value, quick to learn, quick, whatever, then they'll give you benefit of the doubt. So you have to show confidence in your ability to actually learn what you don't know. And your ability to take help from other people, all those things. But my answer is go for it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me tell you a quick story while you're waiting for the next person to come up. I'm going to tell you a quick story on that point. My goddaughter wanted to work her way up to head up a daycare center because she thought one day she might want to own one. And so she'd been a teacher at a daycare center. And so she was applying, she got in her MBA, and so she was applying for like assistant director roles, and she wasn't getting any of them. All right. And I said, well, why don't you aim higher? And she's like, higher? I can't even get this job. I said, no, aim higher. So she aimed for the director job and she got it. Turned out people thought she was overqualified for the assistant director job, which is why she wasn't getting it. So let them tell you no. Don't negotiate with yourself.
Right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one more question. I'm going to have the next person. Okay, this is an online question from someone in the Q&A. Marie, please read for them.
Yes, hi. So we have a question. How did you create a collaborative environment as a CEO?
How did I create a collaborative environment as a CEO?
Yes.
Honestly, the key there is letting people know that they're being heard. When you create an environment in which people believe their opinions matter, that they're being heard and taken into consideration, people tend to actually participate more and collaborate more. It also involves making sure you recognize people for their contributions and for what they've added, because then they want to do that more. So creating a collaborative environment is really about setting the stage as a leader, letting people know that you hear them and recognizing what their contributions are. It also means for those that aren't contributing, are in the room but being kind of quiet, you need to proactively reach out. We all have different styles, and some people are more shy than others. So if you're not hearing from people, giving them a chance and space to actually participate is also important.
Thank you. And we have another question. Can you tell a student how to deal with stereotype threat?
And you know what? Unfortunately, it broke up a little bit on me. Can you say it again?
Can you tell students how to deal with stereotype threat?
Can I tell students how to deliver
on how to deal with stereotype threats.
Oh, stereotype threats.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. This microphone has just got a little bit of buzzing on it.
No, because I got a little passionate about the question. That's why.
No, listen, I understand. Stereotypes are the toughest, right? And those are things you face all the time. If you know you're facing it, right? Then sometimes it can be as simple as trying to call it out a little bit. And let me give you an example. Okay, so when I first started my career, again, I told you early 80s, I was selling computers for IBM. And they put me on an account called the Southland Corporation, which was, they owned the 7-Eleven stores back then. Well, I walk into this company and everybody's got suits and cowboy boots, all men, right? I found one woman in the whole IT department in terms of manager, and they're calling me sweetheart and sweet pea, and they're just totally patronizing, right? Talk about stereotypes. They're treating me like the woman, right? In terms of what's happening here. Wow. Well, I'm sitting having a conversation and this man, customer, refers to me as sweet pea. Well, that doesn't work. So he asked me the question. He said, sweet pea, blah, 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 right? Well, he's my customer, so I can't just call him out, right? But what I did instead is I just paused a minute and I could see him look at me like, well, did you hear me? You know, kind of thing. I just paused a minute to make sure he's paying attention. And then I said, Mac, because his name was Mac McElroy. You can't make this stuff up. I said, Mac, my name is Shellye. And then I answered the question. I didn't make a big deal about it, right? I didn't make him uncomfortable. Now, should it be my job to make sure he's not uncomfortable? No, but life isn't fair. All right. So is that fair? No, but life isn't fair. You have to deal with what's dealt. And the key is I needed to be able to develop a relationship with this person because I had to sell things to him over time. So I wanted to hold it straight, but not embarrass him. And you know what? He got it. He only called me Shellye from that point onward. So, you know, depending upon what the stereotype is that you're facing, let me give you another one. People of color, you'll get this one. I'm now what was I? I was actually a junior exec at IBM, and I gave this really good presentation. And my boss, who was new, he was new in the job, so he's only been my boss for like a month or so, didn't know me very well. He's in the meeting, he comes out and he looks at me. He's from Australia, I think originally. And he looks at me and he says, Shellye, you did a really good job. And I said, well, thank you. He goes, you're really passionate about that and believe in it. I said, yeah, I do. And he said, where are you from? The ultimate, where are you from question. And so I go to tell him, okay, where am I from? I said, well, my father was born, his family was from Jamaica. And he says, oh, you're from the islands. Well, for those of you who may not realize what he actually meant, what he was saying in his own mind is, I'm not really Black. All right? Because he obviously had a stereotype that a Black woman couldn't do that good a job, right? In terms of what I've just seen. So I couldn't let him think that. I said, oh, no, you actually didn't let me finish. My grandmother's side of the family, they came from slaves. My mother's side of the family, they came from slaves too, right? I'm like, oh no, I am Black and I am not an exception is what I wanted him to understand, right? So anyway, it's just, when you find it, don't take it personally. It's not your problem, it's their problem. So try to see if you can figure out how to educate them in a very productive way, even though that shouldn't be your job.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump in and ask one question because it relates to something that Ms. Archambeau just said. So in your book, you talk about how you traveled quite a bit, right? You wound up moving a lot. It seemed every other chapter, I felt like you were talking about a move. And when you developed in your career, you moved your family with you, obviously, right? Can you talk about that? Because it's putting you and your family in a new situation that might not be so comfortable, that might be around people who do or do not look like you. They may not even speak the same language, because I know you traveled internationally. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about that? Because I know when I speak with my students, most of them have never been away from home and
Yeah.
are to do so, even when there's lots of opportunity. So can you say a few words about that while we queue up the next question?
Sure. So, moving, is it a risk? Is it risky? The answer is yes. But risk and reward are two sides of the exact same coin. It's really hard to get a lot of rewards and a lot of opportunities if you're not willing to take risk. And how do I do that? Because you just say, God, well, I'm scared or I'm nervous or I get that. I really do. I'm too, right? But I always ask myself before I'm getting ready to jump into something and take a risk, take a move. I moved my family to Tokyo, Japan. Okay. So I'm big risks. I always ask myself, well, what's the worst that could happen? And can I live with that? And you know what? When you actually write down what's the worst that can happen and look at it, it's tangible. It's actually not that scary. And you realize it's not going to kill you. It's not going to like destroy your life, so you can deal with a lot. And plus, every time you do something that you're uncomfortable about doing, you build your courage muscle. Because courage is just a muscle. Nobody is born with courage in this world. No one. Mother Nature makes sure of it. We are flight animals. So therefore, anyone who you see shows courage, they've built that courage, which means if they've done it, if I've done it, you can do it too. It's just about being uncomfortable a few times and raising your hands, speaking in front of a group, picking up and moving to a new place and realizing that I didn't die. Okay, I didn't die. So, okay, I survived this. If I survive this, I can survive something else. So take risks. Studies even show people who take risks in their career go further faster.
Thank you. Yes, you can make your way over to the microphone. We have another question in the room.
Hello, thank you so much. Ms. Archambeau. The question is, it's a two-part question, but one is, how do you start your day to align yourself and have that vibration of seizing the day with a CEO status? You know what I'm saying? One question, because I'm trying to be there. That's one question. And then I have another one, but it's parenting, because I love that your husband with huge hands, God bless, was learning that with the child, because as a parent myself, I had to become a scientific parent because I didn't know parenting. It's not a book. There are a lot of books, so I'm not going to say. I love the library. I love the smell of the books, but that's not here or there either. It's a digital world. But yeah, how do you start your day? Because I'm curious if your method of writing tasks is done the night before or it's start of the day.
Okay, so I start my day with, and matter of fact, I'll even show you my page. So I start my day. Here's you probably can't see it. These are all my action items, and I have put little boxes by everything. And I have symbols that I use for, is it in process? It's an X if it's done. I mean, I've kept a notebook my whole career. So to make sure I don't drop things. So I make my list continually.
Just one caveat on that, because you said the thing about you said this, I came in late, but the prioritization of your list, there was something that you just added and I didn't hear it, was that you have a list and then you had two columns. Like one is, I didn't.
What I do is by each thing, and it was hard to show you on the screen, but by each of my items, I make a little box, literally a box. And then I've just developed a system over time that actually helps me with those boxes. I put marks meaning it's in process, a dash means, and I put a name, somebody else has now got it. I pass it on to someone else. I put an X means I've taken care of it, right? It's finished. And each, at the end of each day, I go through the list to say, okay, what didn't get done? What either needs to be delegated to somebody else or what falls in terms of goes to the next day. So that's how I manage in terms of overall time. But what I do every day is I exercise, and that's how I ground my mind.
Oh, That's, what do you mean exercise? Like exercise or?
Like exercise, curls, running, elliptical, whatever it happens to be. I do something to get the blood pumping.
Oh, exactly. I'm in agreement with that. I study Dr. Amen, and he talks about the importance of exercise and then the 4 parts of the body of spirituality, physicality, what is the other one? Emotion and mental. And exercise is part of that because of your dopamine and all of that other good stuff that comes out from those results of cardio or something. And the last one is this. How do you teach? Because I have a 15-year-old that's struggling through this pandemic, and unfortunately, I'm not going to get into that conversation because remote technology really made that technical divide a little bit bigger, and it should have been a lot smaller. I'm a 70s baby, and I know what analog is, but I'm really spiritual with the digital. But what I wanted to say is, how do you teach someone a new way of life? You know, with the prior, and me is focused on the atomic habits that you stated with the to-do list. How can I reach someone? And I'm a not custodial dad. He doesn't live with me, so that's another challenge. But how do you teach someone in a way to influence them to take that lead of doing your to-do list on a daily basis and ownership so you could soar?
You start by being the example. Be what you want them to be so they can see it and they can see how it works and see the action. And then you can give them my book.
Hey, plug. I got 2. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. We are going to have, I think we have time for one more question. This is going to be one from our virtual online before we wrap up. Marie?
Yes, so this is the last question. It said, as someone that is reserved and prefer to work alone, what advice can you give me for working collaboratively as I am about to go on to college in the fall?
You know, this is again about the risk taking. So obviously you're more comfortable being by yourself and working alone versus with others. So the key is to start with, even if it's just one person, in terms of reaching out and trying to do something that's in partnership, right, with someone else. Is it going to be uncomfortable? It is initially, but then you'll get comfortable with it as you do it. And as you realize, this is actually a way in which I can learn new things, learn new people, right, get an experience. So what I would tell you is take the leap. It's like getting into a swimming pool. You know, I mean, sometimes you just have to jump in. So jump in, get uncomfortable. You can always get out, right? You can always get out, but give it a try.
Thank you. Thank you for that. As we come to a close tonight, I feel like we've had I wish we had another hour.
Well, actually, can I offer something else?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let me offer something else. Number one, all of you, I made it possible for all of you to have access to an audiobook, which is basically an hour summary in video form of the key points of my book. So please take advantage of it. 2, I do an Ask Me Anything, an AMA session every month on YouTube. So if you search my name and YouTube, sign up for my AMA channel and you'll get notified. You can join it. The whole reason I do it is I answer questions. People, just like we're doing right now, people put out questions and I answer them. And a lot of times what other people ask, you can also benefit from, right? So feel free to join an AMA session if I didn't get a chance to answer the question that you have. Hope to see you there.
Well, that is wonderful. And we will be promoting that. Absolutely. Because I know that there are lots more questions and more things, especially after we've had time to watch the audiobook and to read the book. Ms. Archambeau, I'm going to ask you to close just with a note about mentorship, right? Talk about mentors, your network. What role has that played? Because a lot of times when students come here, they say, all I have to do is go to class and get good grades, and then I'll graduate and get a good job. And it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. But that piece about mentorship, about sponsorship, about networking, can you talk about the role that's played for you in your career as we close out tonight?
Absolutely. And probably because of my background and everything else, I didn't really understand this whole thing about mentors. And so here I am at IBM, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years into my career. And IBM decided they wanted their high potential people to have a mentor. And so they asked us, who would we like our mentors to be? I thought, oh, mentor, okay. So I put down a guy who was a couple levels above me. His name was Roland Harris. I thought he liked me. So I said, all right, I'll pick Roland as my mentor. Well, I get a call a few days later. Shellye, hi, Roland. Shellye, you put my name down to be your mentor. And I'm like, well, yeah, Roland, I thought you liked me. And he said, Shellye, you've got me. Go get somebody else. I was like, what? I didn't realize Roland considered himself a mentor. And that's what I learned, this whole mentor-mentee thing, it doesn't actually have to be formal. And I also learned, because he told me I could go get another one, that I could have as many as I wanted. So I thought, oh, okay. So I put that on steroids. I adopted mentors all over the place. I mean, if I actually sat down to write down the names, I might have had 100 mentors in my career. I mean, when I say mentors, now, what is a mentor? People think they need like one mentor that will take them through their life. No, right? You need different things at different times. And you can learn from everybody. So a mentor can actually be a peer sometimes because they've been doing the job that you're getting ready to do longer. You can learn from them. They can be a mentor, right? You'd be amazed. Anyone that you can learn from can be a mentor. The key though, and I talk about how to do this in the book, don't ask people to be your mentor. What happens when you ask them is they do this. Eyes get wide. They lean back, literally lean back. And they try to figure out where the door is. Why? Not because they don't care about you or whatever, but because the people you're going to ask, they're busy. They don't have time. And they don't even know if you're going to be a good mentee. Okay. So I find don't ask them. Just start treating them like a mentor. You know, ask them easy questions at first. Don't run into somebody and say, hey, Marie, what should I do with my life? No, that's not going to work. Right. But you could run into Marlon and you could say, hey, Marlon, just a quick piece of advice. I saw you give a presentation the other day. It was great. Do you have 2 tips for me? Easy, quick. He doesn't even have to think about it, right? Then the key is when you do the presentation, let him know. Marlon, I did the presentation. It went so much better than my past ones. Thanks so much for the advice. I so appreciate it. Why do you do that? Because Marlon, he probably doesn't even remember the conversation. He may not even remember you. But when you send him the note, he's going to feel good. He's going to feel good. So he will remember you. Remember, Maya Angelou said, you won't remember people won't remember what you say to them. They won't remember what you do to them, but they will remember how you made them feel, right? So that's what you do for mentors. That's the value they get. Anyway, more in the book on that. But the bottom line is there is no job that you will take that somebody else hasn't done in some way, shape, or form before. So why should you learn everything from scratch? Learn from them. Go find them. Seek them out. People love to talk about themselves, especially when you ask them in the right way.
And that is a wonderful note to end on. I think I've been adopted by a few of the folks in this room myself. I didn't realize I was a mentor either. Thank you so much, Ms. Archambeau. I can't begin to thank you enough for giving of yourself and your time. And everyone who's in the room and even those of us who are joining us virtually will have access to copies of the book. Ms. Archambeau has generously made the video book available for the next week. And those of you who are in the room will get the code. Everyone who signed up online will get an email with the code that they can use. And I highly recommend it. If anything that we've talked about tonight has struck a chord with you, you gotta read the book. You have to watch the video book so that you can learn more. Thank you again for your time tonight. Thank you again, all of you, for being here in the room. Thank you to all of you who joined us on Zoom. Thank you to the team who, again, made this possible. I'm so happy that this went off without a hitch. Of course it did, because we've got professionals here. And so, yes, that's right. Clap for yourselves. And so with that, I'm going to sign us off, just with knowing that, this is just the beginning of our Women's History Month program. I don't know how we're going to top tonight, but we are certainly going to try with the rest of the events that we have planned for Women's History Month. But thank you, Ms. Archambeau, for allowing us to celebrate you as a phenomenal woman. And thank you for that Maya Angelou quote. That's one of my favorites. I can't think of anyone else who we'd want to celebrate as well. But thank you, and thank everybody here. For those of you who are in the room, please take advantage of the books that are in the back. We still have some food. We want to and I'm sorry that you're not here with us to build community and fellowship, Ms. Archambeau, but we will do it in your absence.
Please do, please do.
You to do so as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. And by the way, feel free to follow me on social media. I put my stuff on the chat, but LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. All right, bye everybody.
Bye-bye, take care.